Hey, y'all. So I'm excited to be here today because we are going to be talking about the number one thing that I think it's overlooked the most whenever it comes to time management and helping ourselves get things done. And that's optimizing our mind. It's something that I really love. We haven't touched on a little bit, so I thought it'd be super fun to kind of come back to this. One of the biggest challenges that I see women having whenever they decide, "Hey, I really want to make a big change in this world. I want to make a big impact. I have this huge thing that God has put on my heart, but I honestly just don't know how to find the time." That's honestly one of the most common things that I hear, and that's why a certain amount of what I do as a business coach and as a life coach is helping people be able to strategize their day. And whenever we optimize our mind, we can get through that a lot easier. We don't have to backtrack. We don't have to go back and think what was it that I had to do? Hold on a second, let me write it down. Where did I put that note? If it's all in our mind, we can really eliminate all of that. Same thing with passwords, all of the things. It can be really difficult. And especially in today's world, we have so much overwhelm that there's just really there's no shock, right? That we're not able to kind of keep everything straight, and that holds us back. So today I want us to talk about time hacks, but in the way of how do we organize things in our mind where we can remember them right away. Now, before we get to that, just for a moment, I want to talk a little bit about why this works and why it's so important. It's a subject that I absolutely love, and it's neuroplasticity. So, this is your brain's ability to form and reorganize synaptic connections. Now, the more we practice these things, the stronger those connections get, and the more we're able to actually utilize this quicker, be more efficient at it. And so I want to share this because the tactics I'm going to teach you today in our brief meeting together are going to be something that you might think, oh, it's a little difficult. But with time, I promise you, it's going to be so much easier. And you're going to end up paying yourself dividends in the future because you're going to start seeing that time come back to you. You're not going to have to keep on, going back and searching Facebook. What was that person's name? I can't remember it. Those kind of things are just going to be a lot easier for you. That also decreases our anxiety. When we have less anxiety, we're also able to get through our day faster, easier, and it just makes everything click easier. So we're able to leverage that neuroplasticity with simple tricks. So I'm going to teach you. We're going to learn fun and faster and easier. The brain's not just like a filing cabinet. So that's what a lot of people think is I can't fit anything else in my brain. And when we're trying to use rote memorization, which is just going back over it. You learn somebody's name and you just think, okay, his name's Paul, 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 Paul. And you just think about it over and over. It does feel like that. It feels like we have these filing cabinets and not enough room, so we have to smash it all in there, and then eventually the whole cabinet just bursts open and everything flies out and we can't remember anything. But that's really not how our brain works. And we can actually attach things to our long-term memory. So we can attach new things to our long-term memory and remember new things in the long term almost instantly. And I'm going to teach you how we do that. These typical methods are usually kind of stressful and time consuming. They don't really work. So I was saying like with rote memorization, those type of things. So that's why we really want to do these. So why do typical methods of teaching not work? Well, we kind of just went over that. Most depend upon that rote memorization, going back over and back over it. And I want you to see that what we're talking about today is really based upon science. And even you can see the certified neuroscience here, Dr. Willis, MD. He even says that rote memorization really doesn't work well. And it's a lack of engaging patterns or ability to relate to something of substance. So that relation is an important part of this. And so what we're going to do today is utilize things that we can remember in the long term and apply it to the short term. So we must utilize the neuroplasticity by adding key aspects of optimal learning. And the first thing we must do is understand neuroplasticity and forget your limitations. I promise you, if you have said before that, oh, I'm bad with names or I'm bad with remembering things, let that go. Don't say it. Don't speak it into fruition. Literally, I want you to let go of your limitations because you can do so much. The brain's not a filing cabinet, and just like your muscles can grow, so can your neuroplasticity, so can your mind. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the actual training here. And the first thing about our training that I want you to remember is a real simple mnemonic. I want you to think wham, like whenever we have in the comic books, it says it maybe has an H in it. We're going to say WAM, but it's wham. So the first part of that wham is making it kind of wacky, kind of crazy. So that's why I spoke about comic books. Should give you a visual in your mind. And it's a little bit out there, a little bit crazy. But whenever we're trying to remember things, we want it to be out there. We want it to be a little bit crazy and wacky. And I'm going to show you how crazy and wacky we get about this. But it can be really fun, and that stands out in our mind. How many times have you said, oh, I remember that person because they had X, Y, and Z thing? That X, Y, and Z thing was probably not just a beige shirt and a pair of jeans and very normal, natural looking. It's probably something that stood out. So I want you to really allow yourself to be just like the Lord wants us to be, like a child, and just be kind of fun with this and make things that you will associate. So that's the A, W-A. A is associate. Just like I'm doing with this mnemonic here, wham, I'm associating to something for you so you can remember, okay, that's right. I have to make sure I tie it in to something else. And then the last part of that is the M, and that's matching them. So you want to match those two together in some way that makes sense. So whenever you're thinking of wham, I want you to also match that to the idea of in comic books. So you can see the wham a lot of the times, but you also see their thought bubbles. And what we're talking about is memory. So I'm matching that together. I'm associating it for you. And that's how you're going to learn going forward. Now, the first strategy that I want you to, so we're always implementing the wham method in everything we do whenever we're trying to memorize things. And if you're doing it on a whim, sometimes you'll just kind of add things like that. You just kind of make it up like that. But my favorite thing to do is called the cubbyhole system. So I want you to go into your mind's eye, and I want you to think about, whenever we were in grade school or kindergarten, everyone had their own little cubby holes, and maybe each person had their own cute decoration, or the hook might have been a little bit different, something along those lines. So you're walking down that line, and each one, instead of being numbered like 1, 2, 3, even though you know that the first one is 1, the second one is 2, third is the third, or 3 is the third one, and so forth. Each one, instead of it being a number, it has something associated with it. So I'm going to give you my first 3 just based off of time, and then you can download my freebie that I have for you, and you can see all 10 of them if you want to utilize my list for this. But the first one that I use is a sun. So I think of a sun because there's only one sun. There's also only the sun, right? But the sun that's in the sky, we just have as one. So that's my first cubbyhole that I see, is always a sun. And I'm associating that because there's only one. It's the first marker. Okay, so that's a sun. That goes in the first one. So that first cubbyhole that we're walking up to, it has a sun there, or just decorated with the sun. The second one that I use, and this is my own cubbyhole system. You can change these however you most associate these. If these don't really make a lot of sense to you, you can do different ones. So the second one, every time we have 2, I have a couple of different ones for different lists, but for this list that we're going to talk about today, so I think of 2 hands or 2 eyes. So usually I will have a list that I'm memorizing for when at work, one for having to memorize groceries on my list, those type of things, whatever it is. But you can use something that has 2. So 2 eyes might work, or 2 hands, however you want to do that. And let's do eyes, right? Because most things, not everything, but most things that we look at and see on a regular basis, and most all of us all have 2 eyes. So 2, you can think about the cubbyhole being decorated in eyes. So that's 2 eyes. The second cubbyhole space is we're walking past in our mind in that classroom that we used to go to all the time. There's eyes there. Now, the third one is going to be a triangle. I like using a triangle because there's 3 sides. You could do the Trinity. There's so many different things that you can do, whatever makes sense to your mind. Other things that might have 3 to them are stoplights. So there's the red, yellow, and the green stoplight. The other part of this also is I want you to be enacting as many kind of sensations as you can. So, whenever we're learning something, it helps a lot whenever we are thinking about colors, when we're thinking about the different senses, something, how something smells, how something feels, the emotions that it gives you. Emotions are what really, really help us remember things. And I could go into more science on that, but on this, for this point in time, you just have to trust me on that. Emotions make a big difference, and being able to enact the different senses. So, those are the first three that we're going to memorize. Now, let's say that we had to remember a grocery list. That's something kind of simple. You probably have a lot more things in your day to day work that you have to memorize, much longer, harder, structured things or people's names. You could do that with somebody's name, but let's just do like a grocery list. Okay, so there's three things that we have to really remember going to the store, and we don't have time to write it down, so we're practicing this memory hack so we can start using our neuroplasticity and start structuring our mind in a way that it allows us to be able to free up time. So the first one is, the first thing on our grocery list that we have to buy are grapes. I just thought of it randomly. Grapes. That's the first thing that I want to remember. So what I will think about is taking those grapes and putting them in that cubby hole. But that cubby hole, remember, it is a sun because there's one sun. All of those grapes are bursting everywhere, and I can smell the grape, and I can see all of the grape, just everywhere. They're so hot that they're just bursting, bursting, bursting next to that sun because the sun is just so hot. It's exploding them. So that first cubby hole, I can think about, oh, I have to remember grapes. So that's the first thing I have to remember. The second one, so what do we decide on? Eyes, right? Eyes. Okay, so the next thing that I have to remember whenever I go to a grocery store is a lemon. So, the way that I want to associate those and make it memorable in a really kind of wacky way is I'm going to think about squirting lemon in my eye. Oh, it hurts so bad, right? You think about that. You think, oh, that burns, that burns. Well, it's also kind of a good thing in our memory hack because what am I doing? I'm sorry. I'm triggering emotion and I'm helping my mind remember those things. Oh, it's painful. You probably have had it happen before and you can actually think about it. The other thing is things like lemon. It's really great because you can smell that. You can really smell that. So you're enacting a lot of your senses through that. So the eyes, okay, lemons, okay. And then the third one, so we have a triangle. The third thing, that's our third cubby hole, is the triangle. That never changes on our memory hacks. We use the same list for the same things. You may have different cubbyhole rooms that you kind of in your mind's eye walked into, and for different things that you are remembering. But you'll probably remember these three things for a really long time because you're most likely going to remember the peg system pretty easy because it's pretty straightforward. So the third one is a triangle. That's our third cubbyhole. And let's say that the third thing we have to remember is a cucumber. So what I'm going to do in my mind, whenever I think of, trying to put those two together, I think of, for some reason, this is just what comes to my mind. You may think of something totally different, but I think of a triangle that is like a utensil that I can just chop, 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 chop all those cucumbers up. So then I can think of chopped up cucumbers with that triangle. So then I just think about the cubby hole filling up with tons of these chopped up cucumbers. And so then I can remember everything it is that I have to do. Now, three things is not really that hard. We only did three on this simply because of time. But so then I can, whenever my husband's telling me, hey, I need you to get these three things, and he rattles them off, I can apply those. So I can think, okay, first one is great. Think of a way that's going to remember that. Okay, great. The second one is going to be, he said lemons, right? Oh, it's burning my eyes. Great. Eyes is two. I remember that. And that peg system, or I'm sorry, so that cubby hole system, or it could be pegs, however you're thinking about that, is something that stays the same. And then you change the things that are in the cubby holes. And you're going to remember these for probably a long time whenever you do that, because you remember there's one sun. You remember that there's two eyes. Whenever you study that list and it is full to memory, the other things will come on easier. So if you are wanting to do this a little bit more, maybe mix up names with it, you could think of fun ways like Katrina. If you're like, oh, the first person I met was Katrina, that makes me think of a cat. So then I'm going to think of a cat in the sun and just like being really hot, like with a fan, and just being silly with it. You can use names with this, however you'd like. If you are wanting to do more of this, grab my freebie and I'll show you how I remember 10 things super easy. thank you so much for spending this time with me. And I really pray just blessings upon you and that this serves you in a way that allows you to get through your day much easier. Bye, guys.